Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I am Munib Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. The United States has defended its decision not to sanction Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. At a news conference, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Washington seeks to recalibrate, not rupture ties with Riyadh. He said the Biden administration is working to put the relationship with Riyadh on the right footing. Kidnappers have released all 279 girls abducted from a boarding school in the northwest Nigerian state of Zamfara. Talking to media, State Governor Bello Matavale said the students are safe while no ransom was paid for their release. Matavale said repentant bandits helped rescue the kidnapped students. Four people are wounded after police opened fire on the anti-coup protesters in Myanmar's northwestern town of Kale. The security forces also used water cannon and tear gas to disperse the crowds. This comes as foreign ministers of Southeast Asian countries are holding talks with Myanmar's military to find a peaceful way out of the crisis. The International Atomic Energy Agency says North Korea's nuclear program is still a cause for serious concern. Addressing a news conference, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi termed the continuing signs of nuclear activity deeply regrettable. He said Pyongyang is continuously violating the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. The World Health Organization has warned that the world will not be done with the COVID-19 pandemic by the end of this year. Meanwhile, the South African variant of the coronavirus has been detected in the Philippines. In Pakistan, over 1,100 people tested positive for the virus, while 42 died overnight as the death toll tops 12,900. While globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.5 million lives and infected over 114 million people so far. And in the Pakistan Super League, Islamabad United will face Quetta Gladiators in today's only fixture at National Stadium, Karachi. The match was rescheduled for today after a United player tested positive for coronavirus. United are at 4th place on the points table, while Gladiators are at the bottom, losing all 3 matches. These were top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. The United States has defended its decision not to sanction Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. At a news conference, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Washington seeks to recalibrate, not rupture ties with Riyadh. Price said the Biden administration is working to put the relationship with Riyadh on the right footing. He said the U.S. is focused on the future conduct of Saudi Arabia. Price said future arms sales to Riyadh will also be evaluated based on U.S. interests and values. Meanwhile, the White House reiterated that Washington reserves the right to sanction the Crown Prince in the future if necessary.
Of course, we reserve the right to take any action at a time and manner of our choosing. I will note, Steve, that historically, the United States, through Democratic and Republican presidents, has not typically sanctioned government leaders of countries where we have diplomatic relations.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia says at least 5 of its civilians have been injured after the Houthis' military projectile fell in the Jazan region. The Kingdom's Civil Defense said the projectile hit a public street, injuring 3 Saudi and 2 Yemeni citizens. It said the project cites debris damage to houses, a grocery store and 3 vehicles. Meanwhile, the US says it's considering taking additional steps to promote accountability for the Houthis. In a press briefing, State Department spokesperson said Houthis must cease their cross-border raids on Saudi Arabia. Ned Price said Houthis' conduct will have to change to make progress towards peace. Now, kidnappers have released all 279 girls abducted from a boarding school in the northwest Nigerian state of Zamfara. Talking to the media, State Governor Bello Matawalle said the students are safe. More in this report.
Kidnappings for ransom are highly common across many northern Nigerian states. Last week, just when the government was trying to negotiate the release of 42 students and teachers in Niger state, gunmen kidnapped schoolgirls from Zamfara. On Monday, officials said they were in talks with the kidnappers. Governor Bello Matawalle said repentant bandits served as interlocutors between the kidnappers and the government. Matawalle said he initiated a peace accord, which yielded a positive result, while no ransom was paid for the release. He also mentioned the previous number of abducted girls reported by the police was incorrect.
They are here who went there, about 32 of them. They go and engage those bandits, and today you see all of them. And despite the fact that other media has said it's 317, it is not correct. It is 279 children, and all of them are here. They are healthy, and we are going to take them to some medical facilities so that to examine their status of their health.
Most of the girls are unharmed, but at least a dozen were sent to a hospital for treatment. One of the victims said they were beaten up by the abductors. The girls were mostly barefoot and several had injuries to their feet.
Most of us got injured on our feet and we could not continue trekking, so they said they will shoot anybody who did not continue to walk. We walked across a river and they hid us and let us sleep under shrubs in a forest.
After 3 days of an agonizing wait, while fearing the worst, parents are relieved to have been reunited with their children.
Moving on, now 4 people are wounded after police opened fire on the anti-coup protesters in Myanmar's northwestern town of Kail. The security forces also used water cannon and tear gas to disperse the crowds. This comes as foreign ministers of Southeast Asian countries are holding talks with Myanmar's military to find a peaceful way out of the crisis. Ahead of the meeting, Singapore's foreign minister said the Southeast nations are appalled by the violence in Myanmar. In a television interview, Vivian Balakrishnan said ASEAN will encourage dialogue between Suu Kyi and the junta. But the anti-coup movement says the bloc should have no dealings with the illegitimate military-led regime. Now, the International Atomic Energy Agency says North Korea's nuclear program is still a cause for serious concern. Addressing a news conference, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi termed the continuing signs of nuclear activity deeply regrettable. Grossi said Pyongyang is continuously violating the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. He said there is evidence that Pyongyang tested a cooling water facility at an experimental light water reactor last year. The IAEA inspectors are not allowed in North Korea, but they have been monitoring its activity via satellite. Earlier, a UN report warned that Pyongyang produced fissile material and upgraded its ballistic missile infrastructure. Now, the government in India's northern Uttar Pradesh has imposed a partial curfew in the state capital to curb the farmers' agitation. BJP leader Yogi Adityanath says the curfew in the state will stay till April 5th. In an act of solidarity with the farmers, dairy farmers of the state have stopped the supply of milk to the cooperative societies. Meanwhile, the assembly in Punjab has paid tributes to the farmers who died during the ongoing protests against 3 laws. A farmers' leader says they will block an important expressway near Delhi on March 6. Over 200 farmers have died during the ongoing agitation, including 5 who committed suicide in the demonstrations. Now, the World Health Organization has warned that the world will not be done with the COVID-19 pandemic by the end of this year. Meanwhile, the South African variant of the coronavirus has been detected in the Philippines. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.5 million lives and infected over 114 million people so far. More details in this report.
Governments are advising the public not to let their guard down against the coronavirus as cases have started to increase again. In the U.S., the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director has warned that with variants spreading and a recent increase in infections, a fourth surge could occur before a majority is vaccinated. Mexico has started to ease the restrictions as cinemas and gyms are allowed to reopen in the capital. But it has kept strict social distancing measures in place along with reduced occupancy rate and continuous sanitization. The WHO has also sounded alarm bells, saying the number of new global infections spiked last week for the first time in 7 weeks.
In the past week, the number of reported cases of COVID-19 increased for the first time in 7 weeks. You remember that I reported the virus was on a decline for consecutive 6 weeks. But first time in 7 weeks, we have a COVID increase.
In Europe, Spain is considering a green corridor for vaccinated British tourists if there is no EU agreement on vaccination passports. Battling the world's worst surge in infections, the Czech Republic has deployed more forces to help enforce the new lockdown. In France, COVID-19 related ICU hospitalizations have risen to the highest since December 1st last year. But there is good news out of the UK, where data has shown 80% reduced risk of hospitalization for the elderly after a single dose of the Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccine.
These results may also help to explain why the number of COVID admissions to intensive care units among people over 80 in the UK have dropped to single figures in the last couple of weeks, which is something I know that we all welcome.
South Korea says it is drafting an extra budget of over $13 billion to support small businesses and safeguard jobs. Meanwhile, China says it aims to vaccinate 40% of its population by June.
Meanwhile, coronavirus has claimed 42 more lives in Pakistan overnight, taking the toll to nearly 13,000. The Health Ministry says 1,163 people tested positive for the virus in the last 24 hours. The ministry said the nationwide caseload has reached to over 582,000. It said more than 547,000 people have recovered so far. The ministry added there are just over 22,000 active cases in the country. It said less than 2,000 patients are being treated in the hospitals for COVID-19. The UN chief says cutting aid for Yemen is a death sentence after a donor conference yielded less than needed funds. The UN had appealed for $3.85 billion, but just $1.7 billion was offered at a pledging conference. In a tweet, UN Secretary General said the outcome of the event is disappointing. Antonio Guterres said millions of Yemeni people desperately need aid to live. He asked donors to help stave off the worst famine the world has seen in decades. More than 100 governments and donors took part in the conference, co-hosted by Sweden and Switzerland. Now, the US and Mexico have agreed to work together to combat COVID-19 and cooperate on the economic and climate change fronts. US President Joe Biden and his Mexican counterpart, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, discussed the issues at a virtual meeting. During the meeting, Obrador said it is important to maintain good relations with the United States. He said the two countries must coordinate to promote development with independence and autonomy. Obrador added respect for the sovereignty of both countries was key in an equal relationship.
Como lo acaba de expresar y me lo comentó.
That is why our relationship is strategic, and I'm also very grateful that you, as you just said and told me during the telephone conversation we had, you want there to be an equal footing in our relationships, for there to be respect for our sovereignty, and that is very important. We have to cooperate for development with independence, with autonomy.
Y eso es muy importante.
More news coming up in this news bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Well, Welcome back. Now, the U.S. state of Kentucky has declared a state of emergency after torrential rains inundated the streets. The emergency allows the governor to mobilize state resources needed to support the affected cities and counties. The state's National Guard has also been activated and is responding to high water emergencies. Meanwhile, authorities urge residents to remain indoors. A flood warning has issued for the Kentucky River near Ravenna in Estill County until Thursday afternoon. Indonesia's Mount Sinabung volcano erupts again, sending a cloud of hot ash as high as 3 kilometers into the sky. Mount Sinabung's activity has increased since August last year. The alert for the volcano in North Sumatra province has been placed at the second highest level. Indonesia's volcanological survey tweeted that no casualties were reported. The officials had earlier urged people to stay at least 3 kilometers from the crater. Sinabung had been inactive for centuries before it erupted in 2010. Now, in the United Kingdom, an artwork bearing the hallmark of street artist Banksy has appeared overnight on the side wall of a former jail in Reading. The graffiti shows a prisoner escaping on a rope made of bedsheets tied to a typewriter. The prisoner depicted in the artwork is believed to be the famous poet and playwright Oscar Wilde. Wilde was imprisoned in the same jail between 1895 and 1897, having been convicted of gross indecency. The guerrilla artist has not yet claimed the work. However, experts believe that it might be a new Banksy. There have been a campaign for several years to turn the former jail into an arts hub rather than being sold off for housing. Now, a Nigerian artist is rescuing empty coconut shells from the trash and transforming them into artworks. More about his unique artwork in this report. Nigerian artist Nathaniel Hodunu cuts coconut shells and shapes them into leaf-shaped designs for his latest project in Lagos. His studio is located in the city's Badagry coastal area, where many coconut plantations are rooted. Hodunu, a trained art teacher, began experimenting with coconut shells in 2006.
In the school where I was teaching, the parent forum chairman gave me 2 empty coconut seeds and said, okay, my final teacher, I know you can do something with this. So that was when I started thinking of what can I do with coconuts here, what type of stuff is this? And from there, I started making some things, craft works, then from the craft work to installations.
The 49-year-old later began sourcing coconut shells to make more art pieces at local coconut oil factories. His artwork includes portraits, sculptures, plus home and beauty accessories.
My recent artworks. Now, I started introducing colors to some of the works because of what some of my clients are saying that, oh, guy, put some colors to this thing. And I titled this one, Vision.
The artist sells his work for between $130 and $1,300 US, depending on the size and complexity of the piece. Hodunu now runs a quarterly training program for art lovers and enthusiasts to learn creative ways of using coconut shells. And Dolce & Gabbana mixed models with robots in a disco-like atmosphere as the curtain came down on Milan Fashion Week.
Bright colors, leopard prints, and glittering gold and silver coats featured in the Dolce & Gabbana show, which was streamed on the brand's website and social media. The creative duo's 135 looks included jackets with big shoulders in a nod to the 1990s. They showcased faux fur and mini dresses resembling space outfits, but also see-through plastic overcoats similar to the protective gear worn by medics fighting the virus in hospitals. Models paired with 2 small robots created by the Italian Institute of Technology to celebrate the work of researchers in robotic technologies and artificial intelligence. The show ended the 6-day-long digital event.
Now, Now in business stories, most of the major European bourses have edged up. Stocks are searching for directions as US bond yields continue to retreat. London's FTSE has gained close to 0.5%. Frankfurt's DAX CAC 40 in Paris and STOXX 600 have also added marginally. But Italy's FTSE MIB has dipped under the flat line. Earlier, almost all Asian markets declined with the exception of Seoul's Kospi. The Toyota Yaris has been named the Car of the Year 2021 at a ceremony in Geneva. The fourth-generation Yaris, a petrol-electric hybrid, beat 6 other cars to earn the prestigious title. The Yaris was selected by a jury of 59 automotive journalists from across Europe. The executive vice president of Toyota Europe, Matthew Harrison, said it is a great honor for the company. Runner-up was the Fiat 500 Electric with the Cupra Formentor crossover in third. The award is an independent organization supported by 9 automotive publications from 9 European countries. And now let's have a look at the weather updates. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.